Welcome back to another video exploring the hidden secrets and connections of Cyberpunk 2077's quests. Today we're heading to Northside, mostly comprised of rusty maelstrom-infested industrial parks, to explore each of its 10 gigs. This is part 2 of 3 looking at Watson, and I eventually plan to take an in-depth look at all gigs for every outcome and obscure detail. As always, huge thanks to my patrons for your amazing support of these videos, and now, without further ado, let's get to it. Many Ways to Skin a Cat is a gig with several combat approaches and involves stealing a van from a compound. This thing contains a shipment of leather jackets, which are actually part of a wider smuggling operation. The leather is broken down and sold to rippers, who then use it for synthetic implants. Ingenious underground supply chain. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of Tyger claws guarding this one, same as many other gigs, and sneaking around the place ain't gonna be easy, especially when you've got duos like this covering both angles. In addition to simply stealing the van, you'll also have to access the main terminal first in order to be able to drive it, as all company vehicles now require user authorization as a security measure. Best approach to this one I've found is to head on through the back, where there are less guards posted, but also a couple security cameras that you'll need to silently take out. In this back room is absolutely the most interesting snippet of info you can find for this gig though. This notice of expiration refers to a freezer being stored by the company for 50 years, up to 2075, after which it was discarded at a landfill. No info on who the mysterious client was, but if you've been out to the landfill, you'll know that this is in reference to Raish Bartmoss himself. You know, the guy behind the data crash and the fall of the first net. And he hasn't in fact been perfectly preserved at the base of a landfill for 52 years. Actually, Bartmoss died in 2022, so I guess there were 3 more years before his body got taken under this contract. Also, the unit seemingly had the additional services of electricity and a high-speed net connection. But Bartmoss's body is dead, so why would it need any form of net connection? Video for another day. Now back to the gig. Heading out to the front warehouse is going to be the toughest part. If you want to reach the main terminal undetected, then I'd suggest going to the roof, dropping in through this window, and taking out the one guard inside quietly. Once that's done, it's a break for the van. You can either strategically aim to take out every remaining guard one by one, or like me, you can simply sprint over these containers, hop in the van, and leave before anybody even has the chance to process what just went on. Park it in a garage nearby, and Regina will congratulate you on a job well done. You know, for an early gig, I'm actually a pretty big fan of the espionage-style structure behind this one, and the whole Bartmoss hidden detail, well, that certainly buffs it up to an A tier in my book. Rule 1 of joining Maelstrom. Don't join Maelstrom if you ever intend to leave. That's what Bertie Thackeray learns before paying Regina for the Hippocratic Oath gig. You see, Bertie's sister Lucy decided to pay for her brother's freedom by working as a doctor for Maelstrom for 3 months. 5 months later, and we're being sent in to extract her. Now, there's not too many gangoons patrolling here, and if timed well, you can take each one out stealthily without much fuss. Trust me, it's going to be way easier to sneak Lucy out of a clear base, given the stupid movement she keeps doing. As usual, approaching from a side door is easiest, but you'll need 7 tech to unlock this one. On a few enemies, we can learn that Maelstrom recently attempted a deal with the Scavs that obviously went badly, and one of their members, Hans, is now in critical condition. There's also a kind of funny terminal entry here where the Maelstrom boss pretends to quote Lucy, saying, quote, "Hey bro, life's real good here. I'd rather stay with your Nova-ass tombs than run away with some coward like you. Bye." End quote. It's like the guy knows Bertie can't do anything, so doesn't even bother to pretend to sound like Lucy, so as to just kind of enjoy his uncontestable power. When we meet Lucy in the back room and explain who we are, she seems way too preoccupied with saving her Maelstrom patient, Hans, who I mentioned earlier, that she doesn't have time to be rescued just now. And she even tries to rope us in to help her out. Girl, you realize I just murdered all his buddies back there, right? Anyways, we can help her and probably rescue a man who'll go on to kill hundreds of innocents, because all Maelstrom apart from Brick are generally psychotic, horrible people, or we can shoot the guy in the head and she'll get super annoyed but still leave with us.
You're in my clinic! That was my patient!
Just doing my job, which is to get you out of here.
Fine, go ahead. Just hope it's worth it in the end, huh?
Or, if we want to get the most aggroed response, we refuse to help, let Hans die, then make the very reasonable point that we didn't kill him.
I didn't kill him.
You didn't. The man died because you did nothing, even after I asked for your help. That's murder.
honestly, shush, you're pinning all the blame on V when you clearly weren't skilled enough to save him without V's help. Look, if we hadn't come along at that precise second, having left a trail of his friends in our wake, mind you, he still would have died. Granted, we had the power to help, and we could have saved him, yes, but given the context, this feels a bit overly pious and downright ungrateful of her to berate her savior for refusing to go out of our way to help her murderous captors. In fact, I'm seriously starting to question the legitimacy of what she allegedly said back in that email now. Anyway, Lucy will still come with you to the car, Bertie will be happy, we'll get paid, and we'll never have to see that self-righteous woman again. Fun layout, if a bit simple, and genuinely brought out some irritated anger in me. Solid B+ tier gig. Want to see where Maelstromers go through initiation though? The gig Rite of Passage involves us breaking into Maelstrom's specialised Ripperdoc clinic, which certainly looks neither special nor clin. Stealing a recording of the optic nerve splitting process, which all Maelstromers have to go through to join the gang, and getting the hell out with it. Now, you can either use the door and sneak through the entire building, but this place has plenty of shuttered windows, and I'd recommend, if you have leg cyberware, jumping through this window in the back right into the server room. I mean, good luck doing this with stealth, but if you can take the initial guys down, the rest from downstairs seem too dumb to figure out how to reach you, which is pretty hilarious. Taking out one Maelstromer named Brandon Frost will unlock us 2 archived conversations with someone named Osmar Brazi, who I presume is their Ripperdoc from the sounds. One guy he's talking to is interestingly named Aswang, which is also the name of one of the muzzles in the game. I think the similarity here though stems from the origin of the word itself. Aswang refers to the shape-shifting creatures from Filipino folklore like vampires, ghouls, and all that sort of thing. Fitting then that a Maelstromer should have that name in a place where people are transformed, shape-shifted if you will, into cyborgs. The other guy is named Frecker, which can either mean a brave man or a creature such as a giant, demon, or angel. There's also a terminal down by the front where the owners of the clinic are requesting a 10% increase on Maelstrom renewing their lease of the place. Pretty brave, but probably very stupid move on the owner's part. Anyway, once you have the data, the quickest and safest way out is again via this window. Congratulations, you now have full archive footage of the Maelstrom initiation process, which sadly we as a player never get to see. Cool concept, but on account of that, I'm going to call it a C tier gig. Now, this next one really is heavy. So heavy, in fact, that I've already covered it as one of the top 5 saddest encounters in the entire game. As such, I don't want to retread the same ground too much, and you can check out that video for a few more details on this one. But there's plenty I didn't cover there to still tell you about here. When Bryce Stone from N54 News' son is kidnapped and murdered by scavs to film an XBD, the only lead to finding the perpetrator lies in Northside's editing studio, headed up by Gottfried and Frederick Persson. The place is guarded by Maelstrom, but if you want to avoid combat, you can circumvent them entirely by heading through this hidden door in the back, which can be opened by either a strength check or hacking. Then I'm pretty certain you don't need a leg implant to traverse these broken stairs, so voila, we're inside. Before you head in though, be sure to check out this back office. The locker often has a very decent piece of leveled loot, and I've even attained an extremely rare legendary cannabo from here at one time. Then it's time to face the scumbags. To be honest, you don't have to wake them up even. The BD you're looking for is clearly marked at the back of the room, but there's a whole manner of gratifying ways to play this which I've covered before. Shooting the son especially leads to a stellar performance from the father, and to be honest, after all the suffering that they've wrought and contributed to, it's not an undeserved fate. The fact that the son even expects us to be into this shit by offering us something that's quote-unquote real hardcore just goes to show how detached the two are from the reality of what they're doing. Yes, if it wasn't them, there'd be someone else, as Gottfried says, but they're still improving the efficiency of the supply chain and therefore undoubtedly precipitating the success and market demand for the scavs, as well as therefore more horrific deaths. And after reading the files on their terminal, the names of which are so extreme I can't even show you for this video, how could you leave these two to continue such evil work? And as for the Maelstromers guarding the place, sorry, but stealthily as we could leave, they've got to go too. In fact, I'd torch this entire building if this were a red faction game, because this shit is some of the darkest stuff in Cyberpunk 2077. Though it is specifically for this reason, for the anger I and many other players are made to feel towards these two characters, that I name Dirty Biz an S tier gig. Next on our list though, of all the mysterious characters in Cyberpunk 2077, the netrunner known as Bad remains one of the most elusive, and definitely earns a full video diving into theories and ideas about who they are. For now though, this gig of theirs is fairly straightforward. We're simply tasked with breaking into the server room of Mega Building H11, planting some malware on the system, and leaving. Bad's plan is to attack an Arasaka subnet, and with our help, all traces will be rerouted back to the Mega Building. Only problem is that the place is overrun by Tyger claws. However, this being a server room, there is plenty of cover to hide and take them out one by one. In fact, only 3 actually appear to be awake anyway. If you pass the strength check, you can access the terminal in this room with a little bit more info about an upcoming glitter shipment. Glitter is an incredibly powerful, not to mention deadly psychedelic in cyberpunk lore, and in fact, if we take out this sleeping guy here, we can find an encoded shard explaining things a little bit further. It's mostly gibberish, sure, but look closely and you'll see a few pieces of decipherable info. From what I can tell, 100 doses of glitter were ordered by some Arasaka boy, and 250 by Jitaro Shobo, yet another reference to the notorious scumbag from the Monster Hunt gig in Kabuki. This also ties in somewhat to the Little China gig where we go to destroy a glitter manufacturing lab, which we'll be getting into in the next video. It's details like this that really tie the gigs together, and sure, CDPR might have run out of time in many places to fully flesh out the game and give it life in every corner, but the different gangs of Night City are no doubt one of the strongest parts of this game, not just in all their unique designs, but in how we can find recurring communications throughout, and piece them together to make new realizations about things. In fact, the sort of subterranean layer of storytelling in this game is incredibly strong. Anyway, after that, you'll want to get to the terminal in the back and upload Bad's malware to the subnet. The leader, Yuri Shaku, will be net running, but I don't know man, headcanon wise it might be safer to take her out in case she wakes up and realizes what's gone down. But honestly, at the same time, I trust Bad enough as a runner at this point on reputation alone that I doubt anyone's wiping their stuff from the system once we get it on there. So there we go, job well done. Though I'm definitely going to have to look further at some point into Bad's wider plans here, because I don't doubt there's a hell of a lot more to this. Mind you, as for the gig itself, it's alright, not the most memorable, but on merit of delving further into Bad alone, it's a C+ tier gig for me. What happens when a member of the Tyger Claws gets caught stealing from the Tyger Claws? Well, as we're about to find out in this gig, they either die, or they leave the Tyger Claws, and more importantly, get the hell out of Night City forever before they take a bullet. Hwangbo Donggun is the idiot in question who thought to try his luck with the deadly gang, and whilst it didn't go the way he expected, his luck hasn't quite run out just yet. Head to the Northside apartment block, a place you might have already established residence in fact, and meet the guy in room 2137. So as I edit this, I realize that actually says 1237, but I think that was still done intentionally to the point I'm about to make. That's a number that's come up twice now, and people have pointed out to me that the number 2137 is in fact something of a Polish meme, referring to the death time of Pope John Paul II. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm interpreting it as the Polish equivalent to 420 or 69. Interestingly, if we consult the guest list by breaking into the reception of the apartment block, the room will be listed to house a quote-unquote anonymous guest. I'm guessing Regina, and some extra money, had something to do with this anonymity stunt.
What do you say to 3 shillings? And we forget the name.
Anyway, head to the room and meet with Hwangbo, who wastes no time in telling you his nickname is Cheetah because he's fast. Priorities, mate. Priorities. To be honest though, he keeps up with us pretty well, so I'm not disputing the name. Tyger Claws will arrive as soon as you reach him though, so you'll either have to sneak out past them to escape, or just take the lot of them out. There is a back exit you can take to come out and around to be fair, if you can pass the strength check, but honestly, these Tygers in particular didn't seem too tough. Something else interesting I found during the gig though, was in the apartment next to ours with a 20 strength check. 2 robots playing poker. In fact, the first time when I attempted to open this door without the necessary strength, one bolted out and made a run for it. iRobot reference? Maybe. Not sure it's related to the gig, but potentially worth digging into at a later date. There's also a bit of a conspiracy I've started to dig up regarding the previous resident of our apartment, Mike Gallick. But again, not entirely relevant here to the gig at hand. But there's way more to this apartment complex than just this gig though, is what I'm getting at. But for now, just come out to Hwangbo's car, and he'll be ecstatic that we actually did it. We meaning V, and he was just sort of there. there. Drive to the Nomads up the road, but not too quickly, if you want the full string of dialogue with him. He'll explain why you need a nickname. And once the gig is done, and Huangbo goes with the Nomads for a new life, Regina will text you telling you that your new nickname is Mad Lioness. Thanks, that's defo gonna stick. Oh, and also, looks like the Cheetah nickname was justified here after all, because that is some superhuman speed right there. But despite all of that, I didn't find this gig stood out enough to award it anything more than a C+. Scrolls Before Swine starts off pretty simple. A cop named Aaron McCarlson needs some scrolls from a Maelstrom hideout and is tired of the slow bureaucracy of the NCPD. So, in order to get things moving quicker for his investigation, has tasked us to go in and retrieve the scrolls for him. Take out the Maelstromers stealthily, and when we afterwards meet Aaron, he'll give you some extra praise for your stealth. You can even break in through the roof to avoid combat altogether. Now, we can find a message on this terminal which speaks to the exact type of world Cyberpunk is. The previous company in this building closed down, their value was liquidated amongst shareholders, and the workers were compensated purely with tokens for all foods, meaning the brand, not literally all foods. Yep, sounds about right, give them something of value, but completely control how they spend it. The main point of interest though is in the file section, where we can find a video clip of none other than Aaron McCarlson shooting a woman in cold blood. That's why he wants the clips, not so much for justice and the greater good, but rather to protect his own hide. So, with this knowledge in tow, heading over to him with the scrolls, we have several options. We can hand them over, no questions asked, or we can explain that we have seen the contents, but won't do anything about it, just wanted to make him sweat. And in doing these, we'll complete the gig as normal, but Johnny, if you've done the heist by this point, will be very unhappy with our immoral decision. Equally, we can extract double pay for more money, but again, Johnny ain't happy about that. Or we could say we want him behind bars, from there triggering combat, with which we have the final two options. Lethally murdering to death Aaron will result in praise from Johnny, but will earn no money, and Regina will be pissed off at losing a client in the NCPD that she could control. So, the objectively best decision, as far as I can tell, is this one. Tell Aaron he belongs in jail, trigger combat, and then take him out non-lethally. Leave the apartment and we'll get paid double money, whilst Regina will also be happy that he's alive, and she now has full leverage over a high-up NCPD officer, since we still hold his incriminating scroll. What's more, going this route opens up access to the guy's apartments, where we can loot a few extra eddies and a safe. We can also loot this convo from his body between him and a woman named Dee, who seemingly is the woman he killed, over what looks to be a matter of owing her some eddies. Wow, corrupt cop indeed. Check his computer, and we can also find another tie-in with Anna Hamill, the cop in Kabuki from the Woman of La Mancha gig, attempting to expose the corruption of the NCPD. It's no wonder that Aaron refuses to help her when he himself is a corrupt cop already. And if you want to see just how far that corruption extends, then head to Corporation Street in downtown city center and seek out this scanner hustle. Turns out Aaron is also in deep with the Valentinos, so much so that he convinced this guy, Claudio Marino, to take out one of their own, this dude named Darius. Darius was recently released from prison, and for whatever reason, Aaron needs him gone, and conjures up an elaborate cover story that the guy snitched whilst behind bars. Not exactly the saddest of encounters, the guy didn't seem nice by any means, but then at the same time, Jackie was a Valentino once, and overall this serves as a wider glowing example of Aaron being a corrupt cop, and by extension likely the majority of the NCPD, as we can already find out. At least if you make the right decision during the gig, this corrupt guy may be able to be twisted into a force for good. With the multiple options then, as well as several wider links and thought that's clearly gone into this gig, it is in my eyes a solid A tier. Next up, with not much in the way of tie-ins, Lousy Kleppers involves breaking into a Maelstrom warehouse and klepping a databank that they themselves recently klepped from a Malorian van. The databank holds info on Malorian's transport routes, and if cracked, would enable Maelstrom to hit a ton more Malorian convoys and steal an insane amount of weapons. It's worth way more than whatever measly haul they've raked in here. There's also no stealth bonus for this one, so if you want to mix it up by charging in guns blazing, then you might as well. With my glass cannon build though, one stray bullet is very often death, so as usual, this is going to be clean and quiet from me. Be aware of the sniper on the roof, the runner on the upper floor, and the plethora of security cameras, because each could trip you up if you're not careful. On one of the Maelstromers, named Harry Lyon, there's mention of the databank, but it's clear they have nobody here capable of breaking into such a thing. There's then mention of Totentants, the Maelstrom club we visit during Kerry's questline, but nobody from there is available to come and deal with this small-time job right now. Hence, fortunately, the databank databank is still lying there uncracked and ripe for the taking. Pick it up, nice and simple, it's a very straightforward gig. Lying beaten to death on a chair nearby though, sadly, we can find the driver of this stolen Malorian van. Yet another innocent victim of Maelstrom. More tragic still though, is the archived convo found on his body. Earlier the day of the van theft, Todd Riggy had an argument with his wife Gillian over the fact he'd planned to spend that evening with friends instead of her. Things were left on a sour note, and then the evening got involuntarily rescheduled to be spent with Maelstrom instead. Todd's fate as an innocent victim is already tragic enough, but knowing that this was one of his last conversations just makes it all the worse. Aside from this sad and slightly thought-provoking encounter though, the gig's pretty basic with not a ton of flavour, although Maelstrom's involvement is enough to buff it up to a C- for me. Max Jones and Regina Jones are old friends who just so happen to share the same common surname. As you may already know, Regina worked in media before becoming a fixer, and Max, well, he still works in media. In fact, he's garnered a reputation as one of the few journalists in NC to cover dangerous topics like exposing the scandals of corpo bigwigs. We saw as much back in the Westbrook video when Nina Gutierrez sent over some dirt to him attempting to tarnish the name of her corpo ex-husband. It doesn't look like Max took up that job though, because at the time of this gig, he's just landed himself in some major shit after creating a documentary exposing the mistreatment of war veterans. Now, the corpos have put a hit out on him, and valuing his values above his well-being means he's gonna pretty much just sit back, not ask for help, and sooner or later get taken out. Luckily for him, much as he'd never admit that, his old friend Regina isn't quite willing to give up on him just yet, sending us in to rescue him and bringing him to a more secure location, that being her tower. Head into the building, either through the door or a broken skylight if you can't pass the tech check, and be very careful here of the various landmines and turrets strewn about the place. A cyberdeck to disable these is certainly the most straightforward way to go here. As we make our way through, we begin to hear snippets of some interviews. It's Max's documentary, with soldiers explaining how they essentially got swindled by the corpos. Finally reaching Max, choose very carefully this first option. The only way to stop him shooting himself here is to pick the option that we're not a corpo, explaining that Regina sent us. After that, you should be in the clear. Max explains he wanted to take his life into his own hands, to not surrender control of it to somebody else. But honestly, if we'd been sent to kill him and he did it instead, it would have been literally the same result. So pretty loose argument there, buddy. Either way, we're not there to kill him, and eventually he'll be convinced to come with us and allow Regina to house him for a bit, though he isn't happy about it. Max believes that by switching from media to fixer, she's become a sellout. Whereas asking Regina about this, she'll argue that she still trades in information, albeit just at a different caliber. And in fairness, she is probably the most morally sound fixer when we compare her to the rest. I mean, just look at Max's computer. If Regina's use of capitals when trying to warn him doesn't illustrate how much she cares, then I don't know what will. We can also see the email which started Max down his veteran story, though annoyingly there's no knowing who it's from. Share your theories as to who this might be in the comments, and we might get to covering it somewhere. Head to Regina's tower after the gig for a few more interactions with Max. He's surprised at just how much Regina's business has changed and regrets being talked into coming here. Hopefully in time he'll be able to resume work as a reporter, cover more scandals, do more good, and ultimately realize that getting rescued and having to hide out here for a bit was overall for the best. We'll see. As for the gig though, it's well structured, creative, and with further connections to the rest of the game, is a solid B+ from me. The last gig then that we'll have to complete in Northside is one called Occupational Hazard, and on this rare occasion, the enemy we have to fight is actually a member of the Mox with cyberpsychosis. The story for this one is that a Mox named Lil Bex wanted to solve the murder of one of her girls who'd been fried by some XBDs, so she hired a professional editor named Hal Cantos to dig into the footage and attempt to find evidence to catch the killers. Hal did the job, but for some reason the first Mox to boot it up screamed and then went cyberpsycho. This is Anna Knox, who you can also find working as a bouncer at Lizzie's prior to this gig. After her onset of cyberpsychosis, she killed Lil Bex and seriously injured another girl. If we talk to this girl upstairs prior to the fight with Anna, she'll give us the tip to hack into the Mox's subnet to initially weaken her. This is a cyberpsycho fight after all, so it's therefore a bit tougher than the majority of the game's opponents. Sneakily cross this railing and then we'll find Bex, who's seemingly crawled to safety but succumbed to blood loss shortly after. I guess she can at least help now by removing a third 1/3 off of the health of the person who took her down. The fight with Anna isn't too bad, just provided you keep your distance from those deadly mantis blades and cover from the occasional pistol shots. I did try to take her out non-lethally. After all, this isn't exactly her fault, but bear in mind, no matter what you do, speaking to the girl upstairs again after, the game will make out that we did always straight up kill her. Feels like they need just one more bit of dialogue here for the non-lethal approach, but there we go, nobody's perfect. With all that out of the way though, open up this blue shipping container to find the guy we've actually been sent to save, Hal Kantos. He's having a terrible, no good, very bad day, but hey, at least he's alive. And he assures us that someone will be along soon to help the other Mox girl. After a brief exchange, the gig will be done, and Hal will step outside to make a call. Let's have a listen, because this one's kind of funny.
Janie, listen, you're not gonna believe what happened. I was at the Mox's, you know, splicing something together, and one of the girls went... Say what now? Uh-huh. A box of Nicola? A cherry or regular? Yeah, I'll get it. Anything else? All right, see ya. Call me back when you're free.
Yeah, looks like Hal's got himself a girl there who cares more about Nicola than she does about him, and Hal is shaping up to be something of an incompetent and tragic character, a point which can be further seen down in Kabuki with the drone he reprogrammed for Oleg Orlov. I mentioned back in the Small Man Big Evil gig in the Kabuki video how this drone might attack you since it's right in the vicinity, but it's actually part of a random encounter where we can read that Hal reprogrammed the drone, and evidently very badly since it kills its owner and attacks us. That's 2 out of 2 botched jobs now, mate. Maybe if you spent less time buying Nicola for Janie, your work might actually stop killing its customers. No wonder he got fired from WNS. Anywho, it's a cool gig, giving us another cyber psycho to fight, but on account of not fully exploring the non-lethal incapacitate option, I'm gonna call it just a B tier. Now, let me know in the comments below your favorite of these 10 gigs and why, as well as any further details, references, or connections to these that you've found whilst playing. There's 3 remaining Watson gigs for us to cover, which I'll be looking at in another shorter video on Little China. Again, massive thanks to my supporters over on Patreon for making longer videos like this especially easier for me to do more often. You can donate from as little as £1 a month for early access to anything I complete ahead of schedule, as well as your name in each video. Anyway, I can't wait to explore more of these gigs with you in the future, so thank you for watching. I'm Sam Bram, and I'll see you soon in another video.